To ask each of our panelists to speak perhaps in alphabetical order, unless somebody wishes particularly to go first. Speak for five minutes, that's half the session, and then we will have a general discussion. But perhaps before we begin that, Lewis, we've met, but you could begin just by saying who you are in each case and your role. Lewis, do you want to repeat who you are?
Davidovich, I'm president of the Brazilian Academy of Science, also professor at the Institute of Physics of the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro.
I'm Ayrton Escobar. I'm a science journalist working for Estado newspaper. It's one of the larger newspapers here in Brazil.
I'm Belita Coiler. I'm also at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and I'm the current president of the Brazilian Physical Society.
Vanderlan Bolzani. I'm from Institute of Chemistry, UNESCO in Araraquara, a full professor, and I am a vice president of the Brazilian Society for the Progress of Science, BPC.
So, would you like to start?
This is very, very...
5 minutes.
Yes, it's a very complex task to talk about the future of science nowadays. Because I believe that science changes the world when you see in all steps and in all areas. And mainly because the advance of science related to the classical university of research, and also nowadays the world-class universities, and you see that the individuals can change for groups, and now is a consortium that is fascinated this in the I saw the human microbiome that is fantastic because it involves multidisciplinary areas. But this is the universe of central countries that you can see. I'm in chemistry. I don't know what I can do here. That is fascinating reviews in Angivan about the 150 years of Basfer. And you have these revisions, and you have one very interesting about the reinventing chemistry. What is not reinventing chemistry? All science nowadays is faced on new obligation that the science developed until now that bring us so many developments. You need to change in order to have new challenges for the future and also for the sustainability. But when you see when you analyze the future of science in developing countries and you evaluate future of science in developing countries, you need to realize about this, because you have so many challenges that science didn't ask the questions for so many things. But in Brazil is a good example. In the first round table you discuss about science is very expensive and how to promote good science in Brazil. Because Brazil is not São Paulo, and even you spend a lot of investment and you have good science in São Paulo, that in some labs you don't have difference from the labs in the United States, in Europe. You don't find in my area one research level one in Amazonia. And Amazonia is a fantastic nature and biodiversity, that you have so many challenges for new frontiers in science, in all aspects, in chemistry and biology. And when you see you don't have the science at the top, and you can see when you evaluate patents from Amazonia, all patents from Amazonia come from electronics. Not only from a product from a disruptive products from biodiversity that you have several in Europe, in the United States. So I think it's very complex to discuss here about this subject, but when you evaluate this, that I like this cartoon, you see that we are very elegant. If you are women, you like to be like in Brazil and South America, but you have so long distance, and this is the question that you can discuss here. What the future for science in Brazil that maybe Davidovich can talk more about myself, because he has written a lot of papers recently about our situation. If you don't have money to develop science, and also if you need to feed the labs with excellence, you need the good education. And how to do this if you don't have a program from the government? And so this sometimes make me sad, because it's not a question to have good scientists. The last time that we invite a Nobel laureate to discuss in our meeting, he told us, Nobel laureate is a question of government also. And we, in Brazil, you need to have a program of the government to develop good science in all areas. This is, you know that you have so many challenges that you know in my area, in physicals, in biology, and now you can combine all these areas in order to have the answer for the future that you need. But I think in Brazil you have tremendos biodiversity, you have good labs and excellence, but I don't know what the future of science when I analyzed the situation of financial support, because in São Paulo it's clear that you have good science, but I repeat again, São Paulo and Southwest is not Brazil. When you see the index in ONU, UNESCO, you see the index of Brazil, and you need to develop good science in North and Northeast, and I'm from Northeast. So, and I am happy because I am here, but I can see several colleagues there that is brilliant, but it's not necessary, it's not enough to develop good science and think in the future. Davidovich now is involved in to write a document that invites several colleagues to discuss a document about what you can do the science for this country. I think you are going to talk about this. No, I think the only thing that I think you needed to develop good science, you needed to have a very good engineer about the government, university and companies. And in Brazil is almost quite disconnected.
Thank you. Please.
Good afternoon, everybody. You see, we have to realize that science is a very young endeavor in Brazil. The University of Harvard was founded in, I think, 1636. The first university in Brazil was founded, well, in the first quarter, first half of the 20th century. University of São Paulo, 1934. The Brazilian National Research Council was founded in 1951, together with CAPES. Then we have several other institutions that finance and promote science in Brazil, but you see, it's a young science. And if we take that into account, then I think it's surprising how much science has already done for Brazil, because as Brito Cruz has mentioned in his talk, Petrobras is there because Brazil formed chemical engineers, geologists, geophysics, physicists, mathematicians, civil engineers, mechanical engineers. In other words, all these people were formed in Brazilian universities, contributed for Petrobras to be a champion in technology in the world, in the exploitation of oil in deep wells. The same with Embraer, the same with Embraco, which was not mentioned here, but it is a company that produces compressors, for refrigerators, air conditioning. It's the biggest company in the world. It started in Brazil, together with the Department of Mechanical Engineering in the Federal University of Santa Catarina, and so forth and so forth. So lots of things have been done by science for Brazil. Of course, we have problems now. And maybe just because of this development we had in a short time, we are able to have a view of a larger horizon. We are in a platform from which we can see farther away, and precisely because we can see farther away, we have ideas. We have ideas of how much more science should develop in Brazil. Now, these ideas are certainly not consistent with the current funding situation in Brazil, which is very bad. However, because of the theme of this round table, I'm not going to discuss now within 5 minutes the situation of finance in Brazil. However, I just want to mention that with all the hardships we have had along Brazilian history, a colonization by Portugal, which forbade printing of books in Brazil, that forbade manufacturing in Brazil. With all of that, we have reached some very nice standards. We have learned how to publish in the best journals in the world. However, we want more. I think we should look for a situation in which we are leaders in several fields in the world, in which in some areas of research at least, we are champions in those areas. We are already champions in some areas, but there is much more to go. Now, Brazil, I find it is a surprising country. For instance, I don't know if our visitors know that we have here a mathematics Olympics that involves 18 million students in the country. In fact, at the moment, it's impossible to grow the number of students because they have already reached saturation. Okay? They are in practically all Brazilian municipes in Brazil, cities. In fact, they are very present in Brazil. We also have some science Olympics now. We have Olympics even in language, in Portuguese. So we have, for instance, a hands-on movement which is associated with the Brazilian Academy of Sciences that has already reached hundreds of thousands of students, middle school and especially elementary school, by reaching the teachers who are trained in a hands-on teaching of science. So, lots of things are happening, but of course we should look ahead. And if we want to look ahead, then we should decide on some words in the title of this round table, and I'll just leave that for debate, for further debate. First, future of science. I'm not going to do futurology here, but it's clearly a question of who decides about the future of science in Brazil, in other countries. Different countries have different ways of doing that. In Brazil, again a surprising country, we have had national conferences on science, technology, innovation. The last one was in 2010. Thousands of people were involved. People from the government, from the academy, from industry, the National Confederation of Industries was there, the Federation of Industries of the State of São Paulo was there, syndicates, social movements, Indians from the Amazon were participating in that conference, and from that conference came a book with priorities for the science development in Brazil. So the priorities are there. Society has discussed that, and they have decided on the priorities. There is a list there. Biodiversity, of course, is an important priority. It's a huge wealth Brazil has in the Amazon region, in the ocean, which is a huge area comparable to the area of Brazil, in the ocean, the part of the ocean that belongs to Brazil according to international treaties. So we have the direction, and the Brazilian Academy of Sciences, as was mentioned by Vanderland, is organizing now a project for science in Brazil. Several study groups doing work on several areas of science in order to finish with a document that will make proposals for public policy on the development of science in Brazil. So we have there almost everything, every area, and all the members of the Academy are getting progressively involved in these study groups. It's open for associations, so we just are waiting for people to come and contribute. Many of them have already come, and the idea is to produce within some months a booklet, a book that shows, again, these are our priorities, this is the situation of science now in Brazil, and we want to go there. So there is this question of defining the priorities, and education is another matter. I can go back to this question afterwards. Brito Cruz has already mentioned some problems. There are many more, and we must reform our universities deeply if we want really to move ahead. And that's very difficult, not because of the government. That's difficult because of the professors of the universities, because of the corporations in the universities who resist change. And this change must be done in order to go ahead with science, research, and innovation, in particular disruptive innovation in Brazil.
Okay. Yes. You want to go next, please? Yeah, well, why don't you go ahead?
Good afternoon. I am going to talk about a topic I never talked before. I'm not a militant in these things, but because of the title of this roundtable, which was Future of Science in Brazil, of Science and Outreach, Sexism and Racism, I looked up at the Brazilian Physical Society activities, and we have a commission on gender problems, and we have a commission on the Olympics of Physics. And I'm going to give you some ideas of how it fits in the Brazilian scenario. So I'll start by giving you some slides from a friend, actually the former president of the Brazilian Physical Society. It's about physics in Brazil, and I picked a few slides where he essentially gives the backbone of physics in Brazil. So here are the characters in the development. You can see it's only men. This is the backbone of physics. This is not a woman, this is Feynman. Leite Lopes, Costa Ribeiro, Bernard Gross. This is the Compton mission. Then here is some meeting, scientific meeting. César Lattes, David Bohm, José Goldenberg, who was the founder of the Brazilian Physical Society. And this is a meeting at USP. So these are taken from someone else's talk about physics in Brazil. And finally, there was a slide that is very old. No, this is Einstein's visit in Brazil. And this is the Sirius project. We'll hear more, but it was already mentioned many times in the celebration of the inauguration of the ring. There is a ceremony of only men. You can only see men attending the ceremony. So it's not, I would not give a different talk. I think this is the Brazilian reality. Physics is mainly driven by men, and this commission on, oh, and finally I have here the result of the Ibero-American Olympics of Physics in '96, and you see there are 2 medalists of gold medalists, and one of them is a woman. So there's some hope here that there are women emerging in the Brazilian scenario with a gold medal. So I turn now to the society where there are comments on different activities, and I take something from the group of this Commission of Women in Science, and this is some statistics about the research grants for men and women in physics. And this is a period of 10 years' time, and there's very little change during this period, and I believe until today, where 90% of the activity is taken by men and 10% of women only. And this does not look like it's going to change. This does not look very promising to attack. This seems to be an irreversible process. But now let's look at the other activity of the Brazilian Physical Society, which is the Olympics. And so this started in '98, and this is what we get. The Brazilian Physical Society has all the data about that. And I was looking by myself into this data, and you see that the number of medalists, number of women and men medalists in the 2015 Olympics is changing by grade, from middle grade to high school, in the following way. In the 8th grade, 25% of the medalists were women. In the 9th grade, this is middle school, 9th grade, about 20%. Then it goes down by grade until the 3rd year of the high school, where it drops to 5%. So this seems to be an active layer of activity where we can act. We can have a factor of 5 loss here in medalists, and I don't think physicists can explain why or how, but we have the data to be explored by, I think, social scientists. And so the conclusion is that studying the status of women already in the professional level is too late. This is an irreversible process and too late to change. But if you can act early on in the middle school, you may be able to motivate women to continue and to give some positive advice and show that it's a gratifying career to be chosen if possible. So if we increase the number of women by a factor of 5, then we are going to have a situation where 30% of the researchers will be women and 70% will be men. And I heard this is the situation in chemistry now. So there is some hope that we can, if it is to work on these numbers, it's a waste of time, I think, to work on the steady state that we are already in the professional level. We have to act early in the high school and middle school. And there is a project going on in my university. There are 3 teachers in my department that they have a project called Girls in the Circuit, where they give lectures and lab sessions to students in the middle school and in high school, and it's very successful. They already have two of the group that study physics in the university, and usually they don't think of physics as a profession. That's the thing that's being done. And this is the project. So this is real, just to show. I think I think it has to be, since these commissions exist in physics already, we have to make the best of them, and they are just looking at the wrong slab of the career, education for younger people and motivating activities in science fairs and things like that I saw in other countries. I don't see in Brazil so much like public lectures that happen here. this is the way to bring more people in science, not only girls, more people in science. We need more people, but we need more to give opportunity, at least to show it's a possible and gratifying activity for men and women. So I think this is what is being done, and the current commission is already going to study the data on the Physics Olympics to see how they can interfere with that and do a better job than I did. So thank you.
Okay. So I'm the non-scientist in the room. I'm a journalist, science journalist. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about how information flows from science to society. All right, is this working? Okay. And the role of media and how that plays into the future of science and science policy. So, if we're going to talk about the flow of information, we have to talk about the digital world, the digital revolution, because that's where information flows today. When I started journalism school 20 years ago, this is the only way that information could go from scientists to society. You had to go through the media. Okay, so you talked to a reporter wrote a story, the story got published, and then society received the information from the scientific community. Of course, you could also talk on the radio and so on, but it was very difficult to talk directly to society because there weren't a lot of outlets for that. So this is how it works today. You don't need to go through the media anymore. Scientists have a lot of outlets, a lot of ways to talk directly to society through the internet, using social media, blogs, podcasts, YouTube videos. I mean, it's just infinite. Creativity is the limit. You know, if you want to talk to society, there are lots of ways to do it. You make your own media, sort of. It takes a little effort, but it's possible. So let me give you let's do a little experiment here. This is 10 Facebook pages from 2 big newspapers. So the first one up there is the New York Times, the science section. Then the science section of the Guardian newspaper. You have Stephen Hawking and Neil deGrasse at the bottom here, and then some, well-known outlets like Scientific American Magazine, New Scientist, and you even have Albert Einstein's Facebook page. So stop for 10 seconds and think, which one of these guys have the biggest audience? Who reaches the biggest number of people? Is it the New York Times? Is it Einstein? No, yeah, I freaking love science. That's a big one. Okay, so think about it, and here's the result. So the biggest audience, Albert Einstein's Facebook page is managed by I think it's a foundation called Green Light or something. It is just like quotes from Einstein and emoticons for you to use in your cell phones. It's all fun stuff. And it has like 19.5 million followers. Okay. Second one is I freaking love science with 25 million. And then you have Stephen Hawking and deGrasse, and compare these 2 scientists here, Hawkins and Tyson, to the big newspapers next to them. They have almost, 3.5 times more audience, more followers than the 2 biggest papers in the US and Britain and Europe. So that's, when I say you can create your own media, if you put enough effort into it, and you make that a priority, you can actually reach a larger audience than the biggest newspapers in the world. And since I work for a newspaper, maybe I shouldn't be telling you this, but it's the truth. And to wrap it up, so why is that important? If this is project that is called the Media Insight Project, I think it's from last year, and they asked people, who do they trust more? Where does their confidence lie? And that's in the United States. The two most trusted institutions are the military, and that's a very American thing, of course. And the second one is scientific community, okay? And the press. So me and Congress, we're at the very bottom here, which is not nice. But so that's to show you the kind of power you guys have to communicate your science, okay? People trust you. And in Brazil, it's not that different, okay? This was done last year as well by the CGEE, Strategic Research Foundation here in Brazil, connected to the government. And scientists at the very top again. They are the most trusted individuals, more than doctors, writers, religious people, the military, and politicians, of course, are at the very bottom as the least trusted. And 78% of the people said they are in favor of investing more money in science. Where that money is going to come from, that's a different question, but I think it's safe to say that if a government takes the strategy of funding science or increasing funding for science, the society will back it up. Okay, I don't think anyone will be against investing in science. So, that's it. Open for questions, and just to wrap it up, you guys, everybody always says that the media is like the fourth power and that kind of thing. And the media does have a lot of power, but this is just to show that you guys as individuals and as institutions, you have a lot of power too. So, the future of science it's in your hands. That's it.
Thank you. So we have just about 10 minutes for questions. Nathan has a question here.
I had a question which I think I can direct to all of you, but in Bolita's photos, the thing that is not most striking is that there are a few women. It's that everybody looks European, nobody looks Brazilian. So if you could have any comments on this, if there exists racism, if it doesn't.
Bolita, you want to comment?
I was going to say that from the prehistory of physics in Brazil, we had 0 women. So 10% is a big progress already.
But the question of the European origin.
Yeah, I think. No, I think this is from early on. The pictures I showed. Oh. Yeah, I think this is a tradition.
Luis, do you want to comment?
Most of the scientists in Brazil have some European origin. Mainly in São Paulo, that you have so great concentration of Italians descendant. I am a Brazilian, completely Brazilian, but I am an exception because my dad was an Indian descendant, and my mom is from Portugal. So I'm feeling like Brazilian. But most of my colleagues, if you see, and even my name, Rosani, is also, that has some origin in European origins.
Luis?
Well, just a comment. Of course, I don't have to tell you about my origin, but so it's clear. I mean, you go to the universities, and the predominant color is white. Even though there was some quotas, recently for black people, but still white is dominant. And the question is, as I see it, it's not so much related with race as it is in other countries, but it is very much related with social condition. Okay? So, and it's true that with the history of Brazil, people, black people, people with Indian origin, they have come from a situation in which they were in the lower class, and now some of them can go through. But the truth is that the inequality in Brazil is huge. It is really very impressive as compared to other countries, sometimes even in Latin America. So, and that's something that the country must solve, okay? And, because we are somewhat wasting, from the point of view of science, we are wasting millions of brains in the slums of the big cities, in the interior of the country, brains that cannot go to the good schools that people from middle class can go. Even in big cities, inside the big cities, there are two types of education, one should say. People from the middle class go to good schools. They are not so good, I should say, but much better than the schools for people from the slums. So the schools that should be able to reduce the inequality, which comes from the families of origin, like people from the slums, they don't have the written word at home. They don't have books, they don't have journals. While students who come from the middle class, they have the written word at home. So they go to the schools already with an advantage over the other people. And to make it worse, the schools for those people are much worse. So it's a big problem in Brazil, and certainly it's one that must be addressed if we want to have, say, a protagonism in the world. Certainly.
It's not only in science. If you look at medical doctors, engineers, all professions that are higher education professions are mainly European populated.
Is there another question here?
Yeah, I guess it's related to that. A couple of weeks ago, I was at Fermilab, and we had all the labs. There was a special reception for the Black Physics Society, and so we had 2 days showing Black students, undergraduate mostly, but also graduate students in physics. What is at the lab and opening options, and of course we discussed with them, how hard it is. It's very hard in the US as well, where the Black population is not irrelevant, to get any physicist who is Black. Okay, in fact, at Fermilab we have a big exception, that is a female, Black, and Latin American from Brazil. So, but it's very hard. So, and there are in the US some programs like bridge programs. I mean, what you were saying, okay, maybe here has to start at a lower level, but also in the US I think is a very common situation where obviously these minorities, these diverse people come much less prepared. They can't really compete to go to a good university because they don't have the preparation. So although it's not ideal, one option is to have these programs where the students, undergraduate students, are offered the opportunity to go for a year or two to kind of level their knowledge, correct? And in the US it's done at the level of undergraduate to go to graduate school, but maybe here you have to do it at the level of high school, or I don't know. So are there any of those programs that would help diverse people to have the opportunity to be at a reasonable level, so that they could even think about competing or demonstrating their abilities?
In Brazil, you have to start much earlier because of this huge social difference. So, in fact, I think Brazil is a good example of something that was developed by a Nobel laureate from the United States in economy, James Heckman, who made some studies of poor communities. Actually, he did some meta-statistics. He did not go directly there, but he used data, available data, of studies that were made on poor communities in the United States that were divided into classes just for having some standard of comparison. So part of it was not touched, but then part of it had a special attention before elementary school. And that was not just education, it was health and social skills and things like that. And then they did not do anything else to these populations, but they followed them for 25 years. And those that had this special attention before elementary school, they had statistically significant figures, a better chance of getting to higher education, lower criminality. In other words, of course, that's something very intuitive. The idea is that the best investment is precisely on children before they go to elementary school, because when they get there, they already have bad conditions to compete with children that come from richer families. So in Brazil, we have that in some states, but it's still very localized. So in Rio Grande do Sul, there is a program that has lasted for many, many years, and that does precisely that. Goes to the poor families before the children go to elementary school, very successful. Okay? So that's where it must be done now. Of course, we already have the students who have gone to high school, and now they are at the university, and they have problems there. And that's connected to something I said before. Our universities must be changed. You see, just to give you some idea, an engineering student, for instance, may have in one semester 11 courses to follow simultaneously. I don't know how they can do that. Of course, it's impossible to learn, and it's possible to learn to help students who have problems with special teaching, because there is no time for that. So we're fighting to have some more modern universities. There are some in Brazil, especially the new universities. Now, some of them are being built along these lines. More time, more free time for study, for helping undergraduates who have problems, and even to make very good undergraduates to advance in their careers faster than others. So we have big problems with that. So localized experiments, just to answer your question. And for doing that in universities, we have a big problem, which is the way the programs are built. There is very little time to help students who have problems in undergraduate school. We would like to change that. And there are documents of the Brazilian Academy of Science proposing those changes.
Briefly, one question. Last question. Great.
Thank you very much. Mine is it's a comment. I think to answer the big question of this roundtable has to do with the future of science. I think the future of science, I agree with what you said, lies on the future of our young people and the future of the youngest generation. So I completely agree with what Luis Davidovich was saying. In my opinion, the future of science lies in the future, in the education, in the current education of our young people. Being a collective endeavor, science depends on the education of our whole community. It's a cultural endeavor, and science has to permeate the whole society to be able to influence the society. I think young people, since preschool, have to be taught to reason, to question, they have to be enhanced in their curiosity or take advantage of the natural curiosity, and that we're not doing that. And I think in our society, the discrimination and the lack of access to education of the poor sectors is much more worrying than gender problems. I think one has to, of course, consider gender problems. It's very important, and I agree with what Belita Collier said, but in addition, one has to pay special attention to give equal access to our young generations. That's fundamental.